how's it going over there? I was speaking about GMO food, Bill Gates, and my big fat face that literally just wreaked havoc in your life there. But we are going to correct ourselves in a minute now. Yes, I was speaking about genetically modified food, and how it is that it's literally not even such a big idea all over Africa. South Africa is quite heavily industrialized and heavily influenced by the West, so we got a whole bunch of GMO rubbish all over the show. Grandshop, we also have tags of GMO, non-GMO. Like if you're buying cinnamon and it's not and it doesn't say on the cinnamon package that it is non-GMO, then it's GMO, and non-GMO food is a lot more expensive. So yeah, unfortunately we have done away with our roots in South Africa, but other African countries are still largely non-GMO, so we have not been taken over by a poison in our food that likely might even mutate our genetic structure in a way that is unfashionable in the sight of God. Anyway, anyhow, so that's the one thing that I also kind of highlighted, the global agenda over food, the food crisis as well. The food crisis apparently currently going on in largely the Western nations of this world. Let's talk about South Africa. Hello guys, what's up? My name is Kurazishus, Kurazamzam, Zuzum, Zoom, Zoom, Zubzabapoo. Right, and I'm South African, and there is no current food crisis in my country. There is no supply chain crisis in my country. There are no ships that are not landing on time in my country. And if you go to the supermarket, you're going to find everything you found there last year. If anything, they might have new products on there. There are no empty shelves in my country. There are no empty fridges in my nation. There is also not super inflation in my country, just an irresponsible government that is making doubly sure that we cannot get electricity. But whatever was going on with our supply chains down here in sub-Saharan Africa has been the same all along. So the supply chain issues that are apparently bringing about a global famine going on there in the west of the world, in Europe and in the United States of America, is not our issue down here in Africa. We've always been a little bit of a hungry conglomerate, so it's not like there is anything brand spanking new going on when people are starving in Africa. However, it is not because of a deliberately planned supply chain blockage. Scissorhands, Edward Scissorhands is Justin Trudeau. Edward Scissorhands is Bill Gates. Edward Scissorhands is Klaus Schwab. Edward Scissorhands is Noah Yuval Harari, whatever his name is. Edward Scissorhands is Joe Biden, okay? There are Edward Scissorhands sitting in the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, and maybe even the WHO, okay, that are literally nipping in the bud the joy of Western society. They are messing with first world economies at present. But not so much are they touching Africa because it's already been kind of, in a little bit of a slump and a state. I have not personally, neither can my mother give you any such testimony, experienced not being able to pick up something that has always been there at the store. The shelves of Woolies are still bustling, teeming at the folds with goodies. The shelves of Pick and Pay Checkers. The shelves of even your clothing stores. There is no supply chain issue. However, there is one in the US. The US is very hugely influential. It is a world superpower. It is indeed a superpower. For those reasons, it is choking and severing and suffering of the rest of the world for them to suffer in this way, because they are trading partners with literally almost all the world, if not all of the world. However, their issue is kind of isolated. Yes, it does have ripple effects like a ricochet, but it has not yet come here down in Africa, where we are at more South Africa, to a point where we're like, oh snap, like, oh man, like, where in the world is my Tinkies from my shelf? There is still Tinkies, there is still strawberries, there are still blueberries and flowers being bought. There are still cinnamon sticks and cinnamon crushed powder and ginger at the food lovers market. It's literally all still there, guys. And ever since these global food crises stories started being flailed around on social media, nothing has ever changed. The only thing that I likely might say might have changed might be the prices, but even then, not too badly. The war in Ukraine that wreaked havoc in the sunflower industry did not wreak havoc in our lives, because guess what? Oil might be a little bit more expensive in this country, but sunflower seeds are the same price. They're still hella cheap. So I'm trying to help you understand that the disaster that is being magnified more so because it's coming from the news channels of a world superpower is not as there in our other countries, everywhere else that we are at, in the periphery, as what's going on in the US. It's like they're being nuked by a bomb, And yes, all that radiation and all of that radius and all those projectiles from the nuke might spread quite a distance, but not big enough for it to be a little bit of the 100 global catastrophe with radiation. It's more like the bomb at Hiroshima, as opposed to it being like, I don't know, an extinction level event type nuke. So essentially the US is in trouble, but not so much the rest of us. I'm just saying. Okay? These are the observations I'm making from down south here in South Africa. What's going on? Our country sucks. Like, frankly, there's never any power. But that is a man-made issue because of governmental indiscretion, because of deals that they're making with leaders indeed just there in the West. They're busy signing deals and, like, chest bumping and butting, like, shoulders and buttocks with Vladimir Putin to, like, diss us or something. To deliberately create a Galilean dialectic kind of model where there's a disaster down here, so let's fix it all. Let's come rock up as Spider-Man, Superman, and all different kinds of superheroes. Maybe the Incredible Hulk, because they're always so angry at each other, pretentiously so, throwing potatoes and bananas at one another in front of us so it can look like they're at war, when down below, underneath the table, they're actually doing some shoddy deal. Yeah. But largely, we're still kind of stable, even though we don't have power. Our economy is being decimated by an irresponsible government that has made a decision to try to experiment on his own country the way that the United States government is experimenting on their own land. South Africa is the wimp of Africa. I will tell you that. It is the wuss of Africa. South Africa is the... like, if we were gonna use terminology within the racist ideology, you know how within white supremacy there are these black people called Uncle Toms, and they are allegedly, apparently, these guys that support this white supremacist regime despite them being black, just for the sake of gaining perks and benefits so they're not so harshly mistreated during a time when everybody else is being harshly mistreated just because they happen to be supporting the white supremacist government. Yes, thank you. In the movie Sarafina, there was this character there by the name of Sabela. Sabela or Sabelo was an Uncle Tom because he worked for the apartheid government at the expense of black people that are trying to come out of the oppression. Well, in using that analogy of an Uncle Tom, South Africa, in comparison to the rest of Africa, is like a freaking Uncle Tom. In other words, it is the one African country that is like literally throwing itself to the dogs to be cooed over by Western powers and not independently grow, such that it has allowed a lot of Western influence to tarnish its Africanacity, in a way that other African countries have not sold their souls over to the Western devil, if you want to call it that. The South Africa is an Uncle Tom, but in using that analogy, let's rather say it is the sellout in Africa. It is the least African country in Africa. It is the least proudly so African nation in Africa. We have been more gentrified than any other single nation in this continent. And so South Africa, when you look at me and me telling you my story and all of these Western influences that I am literally bringing through my camera, as you can tell, this gentrification of Karabo, it is only because my country is the sellout of Africanacity, the only one or the most selling out nation in Africa. Like, if you go to Nigeria or Ghana or Kenya, even Botswana, Lesotho, any other African country, you will find so much rich African culture still thriving. However, like literally just in broad daylight, every day they walk around like that. Even their gear, their outfits, what they wear in their lands, they wear it on the daily. Whereas in South Africa, my Tswana gear, I would only wear it on my wedding day, just to say, or on Heritage Day, to say that I'm a Tswana bride. But you will never find an African Tswana girl walking around Monday to Monday. Every single day after bathing, she gets into some Tswana gear, or some Zulu gear, or some Ndebele gear, or some Swati gear. You're not going to find that. And that is literally only in South Africa. Whereas if you go to Nigeria, you find men and women there wearing their gear at work. They are literally on Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Friday. They are rocking that gear. Go to Ghana, Angola, anywhere, and you will find Africans maintaining their Africanacity. Even in India, you will find Indians rocking their Indian gear largely. Walking up and down the street, you will know that you're in India. Do you understand what I'm saying? But in South Africa, especially go to like downtown Joburg, go to Sandton, even Soweto, where it's full of a whole bunch of mixed cultural groups, the tribal groups. Next part. Okay, let's